Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to TGW Turnbuckle Talk. Here are your hosts, EvilPenguinGaming and OddSmith311.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 4 of TGW Turnbuckle Talk. I am Evil Penguin Gaming.
And I am OddSmith311.
And we thank you all so much for stopping by and spending part of your day with us. So, last week was a pretty controversial topic. We talked about the death of kayfabe. Kayfabe being the basically suspension of disbelief in the wrestling world to make you believe everything is real.
Yeah, we really approached it from a fan point of view too. You know, we tried to get into some good examples of like what it was like when we were younger, what it was like before we started, what it's like now, and compare it. It's a pretty good episode.
Lots of very specific examples.
Yes.
It was actually a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to going back and listening to that episode again to rediscover those examples and even go back and watch them. And there was a lot of examples we didn't bring up, like the ones we thought of after we were done, like how I mentioned Randy Savage and Jake Roberts with the snake bite.
Oh yeah.
That scared the hell out of me when I was a kid.
When's the last time you seen a cobra in a wrestling ring?
Right.
I mean, you didn't know it was divinamized as a kid. You're like, oh my god, it's gonna kill him.
Or the one you brought up with Hulk Hogan and the Earthquake on the Brother Love show, when you had Hogan clutching the cross because everyone thought he was dead.
And he sold the shit out of that too, man.
Yeah, he did.
Oh my god, you could really. And then they had people writing in letters to encourage Hogan.
Oh yeah.
Which they then used to form a mailing list, which is genius. But kayfabe.
Back when kayfabe was real.
Yeah.
So, this week, this is going to be fun. Because I'm really curious to see how you're going to go about this. We are going to discuss our personal Mount Rushmores of wrestling. So what we have done. Now let me clarify that these are our personal opinions. These are not the opinions that we have of who has impacted the business overall the most, the best impact, on the business. What we have done is we have looked to the past from when we were growing up all the way up until today, and we have both chosen the 4 people that have made the biggest impact on us, on the way we watch wrestling and the reasons that we love wrestling. I'm really, really curious to hear who your 4 are and why.
Yeah, and likewise, because like I said, like we were talking about off air before, I don't think there's gonna, and I could be wrong, I don't think there's gonna be a lot of overlap. I see at least one name that I think might overlap, but when you put that personal spin on it, man, that's what makes it so interesting. Although I think we're going to notice a particular correlation with a lot of these guys who were some of the biggest names in the business, which I think that kind of goes hand in hand, but maybe not necessarily, depending on your, it just depends on where you come from.
Well, it depends on who you loved. Somebody could say Brooklyn Brawlers on their Mount Rushmore of wrestling.
Yeah. Lord Alfred Hayes.
Lord Alfred Hayes. It's all about your opinions. But before we get into that, we are going to handle just a little bit of promotion. So we will be right back.
Join me, OddSmith311, and the rest of the BTV crew every Thursday night, starting around 9 o'clock, for Insomniac Hours. I'll be playing some of my favorite games, from Super Nintendo to Wii, PC, the Xbox One. We'll be all over the place. It's what we like to do. We stay up late, we play games. You can follow us at Twitter, Bananarama_TV, for updates and interact with us during the show. Be there or be square.
Don't be square.
Join us every Friday evening as Felix and Loom.
And whoever else I can convince to come play games with me.
Usually, hopefully me, OddSmith311.
Oh, someone will be there with me.
We'll be doing multiplayer gaming this season. Something we're going to try.
Yes, every Friday night. We're going to be playing various games with our friends. And it probably will vary greatly depending on what games everyone has and what we want to play. So, it should be an interesting potluck of gaming.
So yeah, stop on by, and let's all game together and do what we do best.
And if you don't want to play and you just want to lurk in the chat room, well, that's fine too.
You can find us on Discord as well.
Yep, so the main place for that is twitch.tv/Bananarama. Thanks for listening.
Join me, Evil Penguin Gaming, every Wednesday this season at 1 p.m. for Retro First Timer. I'll be playing games, old games that I've never played before, like Zelda, Star Fox, Mega Man. You never know what's going to pop up. That's every Wednesday at 1 p.m. for Retro First Timer with Evil Penguin Gaming.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening. And we want to take a second here to thank our Patreon supporters. We appreciate you very much. You help us do what we do. All the donations, all that money stacks up, and it helps us afford some really good things for the channel and the station that we normally couldn't.
And all that money goes right back into the channel. We appreciate everything everybody's done for us, and we just want to continue to make the best entertainment we can, and do what we enjoy doing: playing video games, interacting with everybody, and trying to make as much original content as we can. So stop on by. We have all kinds of perks that you can be part of.
We got perks. We're gonna give you shout outs. We'll put your names on our videos. It's a way to help out and support if you're not sure how, and you like what we do. It's patreon.com/BananaramaTV.
Once again, we'd like to thank everybody who supported us and everybody who's donated and continues to help us grow.
Thank you.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. So, our personal Mount Rushmores of wrestling. The 4 people in the business that have had the most impact on us, the way we watch wrestling, the reasons that we love wrestling. As always, I'm going to go first.
That's what she said.
Giggity. Now, no particular order. No particular order at all. The first person that I put on my Mount Rushmore of wrestling, and this is a tough one because I'm in my head right now going back and forth between this guy and another guy. But I think just because of longevity that I'm going to go with, the guy who created it all. Vince McMahon.
Oh.
Because now let me tell you, who I was going back and forth between is Vince McMahon and Bobby Heenan. Because of Bobby Heenan's character when I was a kid, his commentary. I can go back today and watch Bobby Heenan clips of matches, commentary, whatever, and I could do it all day long, and I could do it all week long and never get bored. Because I just love Bobby Heenan that much. But when you look at first and foremost, the creative mind of Vince McMahon. The fact that, going back to last week's episode, he wanted to keep kayfabe alive for a very long time and was on screen as a commentator.
For years.
He didn't have to do that.
No.
You know, I mean, on top of everything else that he had to take care of, he had to make sure his voice was able to resonate with the crowd. And he had to make sure that he could work off of whoever was teamed with him that night. Because Vince and Bobby were always great together. I loved listening to Vince and Bobby together. But Vince and Jesse.
Yes.
Vince and Jesse were one of my favorite commentary teams of all time. I absolutely love listening to them because Jesse was such a good heel to Vince's babyface character at the time, and the dynamic was absolutely perfect. But then, you know, you got later down into the 90s, and then like we talked about with last week with the Montreal Screwjob, and then the character of Mr. McMahon, out of necessity, was born. And one of my absolute favorite on-screen characters ever.
Yeah.
Because he did everything in his power to make you absolutely hate him.
He's ultimate heel.
Exactly. And it's the different kind of heat that we talked about last week. Because he had, I mean, white hot heel heat. Not go away, we don't want to see you on our TV heat. I mean, Vince McMahon, especially, you know, that speaking of keeping kayfabe alive, the guy won the Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
Because he was in a storyline and wanted to keep that heel character, the kayfabe aspect of that heel character alive. He won the Royal Rumble.
He was the champion a time or two, wasn't he?
At least once. I don't remember exactly when. But yeah, he was, and he was a WWF champion.
Ah.
It was before it was WWE. But then even then, you know, that Mr. McMahon character stayed alive so long that after the whole WrestleMania 23 thing, he went into a feud with Bobby Lashley and actually beat Bobby Lashley for the ECW title.
Which is just a bizarre sentence.
Yeah, Vince McMahon defeats Bobby Lashley for the ECW title in like 2000 whatever. Wait, ECW is still around? No, well, a very, very watered down version of ECW.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But, you know, that's my opinion.
Quote unquote ECW.
Right. WWECW.
There you go.
But yeah.
Well, he was even on TV, maybe 2 years ago with Kevin Owens.
Yeah.
Where he
the
took
headbutt.
a bump. Yeah.
That headbutt was fucking brutal.
And what is he, like 74? Something like that?
He's up there. He's up there in age, and he is still taking bumps. And now, I understand that I may not agree with a lot of the creative aspect nowadays, but I'm looking at him back more as a commentator and an on-screen character from like the late 80s into the mid 2000s, maybe even into the teens.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a constant.
Yeah.
You always had something going on with Vince McMahon, especially the higher power storyline. Ha! One of my absolute favorite storylines ever.
Vince McMahon versus God.
It's me, Austin! Oh my god, I loved it.
That music, man, when that music hit, no chance.
Oh,
That's
yes.
what you got.
Oh, I got chills just now when you did that. But yes.
That strut. That over the top.
Yeah. The Vince McMahon strut. Gotta love it. So, the first of 4 people on my Mount Rushmore of Wrestling is Mr. Vincent Kennedy McMahon.
Excellent. Excellent choice.
Now, my second choice might be unpopular for you, because I know that you weren't necessarily a huge fan of this guy, or a fan at all, back when we were younglings. But, I mean, I was a huge Hulkamaniac as a kid. Because, I mean, now remember, WrestleMania 4 was my first introduction to wrestling. Now, in the tournament, Hogan and Andre had a bye into the second round. And then they actually ended up, it was a double DQ or a double countout. I know neither one of them went on.
No, I think it was a double count out.
But then, you know, at the end of the tournament in the Randy Savage Ted DiBiase match, you had where the Mega Powers were starting to form, because Liz went back and got Hogan and brought him out. And then it was supposed to be Robin Leach, I think, was supposed to present Savage with the title.
I think so.
Hogan went out and yanked it from him and like stuck it right in the Macho Man's chest, like, "That's right, brother."
Here you go, little dude.
But I mean, you look at that, and then growing up, you know, I started to hear about the Hogan Andre match from WrestleMania 3, the body slam seen around the world. You know, I believed that Hogan was the first person to ever beat Andre.
I'm pretty sure, man. Like on a national stage.
And then just WrestleMania after WrestleMania after WrestleMania. And not just WrestleManias. The other of the big 4 pay-per-views. Hogan won 2 Royal Rumbles, 91 and 90. Was it 90 and 91? It was 90 and 91. Because Flair won 92. You know, he had so many incredible storylines when I was a kid. You know, if you look even just at WrestleManias, you take that WrestleMania 4 when the Mega Powers were starting to form, and then you go on to WrestleMania 5 when the Mega Powers explode. Absolutely unbelievable. Nobody saw it coming.
It's one of the best book storylines I think that company ever did. Hands down.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then you go on to WrestleMania 6 when it was... Hold on. Champion versus champion. Title for title. Against the Ultimate Warrior. And then, you know, WrestleMania 7 was Sergeant Slaughter. We discussed that last week. WrestleMania 8 was against Sid Justice.
Yes.
Oh, Sid Justice. And then you had WrestleMania 9 when he beat Yokozuna in an impromptu match for the title. And that's just WrestleMania. That's not counting, like, his feud with The Undertaker in 91.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he had so many little sub-feuds that didn't touch WrestleMania.
Yeah, just stuff throughout the year. I mean, Hogan was like ever present in that time frame. I mean, he was always there doing something.
Exactly. He was. I mean, you really thought the guy was immortal. It was. It was such. It was incredible to watch as a kid because you legit thought the guy was a superhero. And growing up in the early '90s, the late '80s, early '90s, back before you had all these crazy Marvel Cinematic Universe films and the DC Universe films and all these big budget blockbusters. That was how I saw superheroes.
Well, he was larger in life. I mean,
Exactly.
that's why he was the perfect person to play Thunderlips in the Rocky 2 movie.
Thunderlips.
He was literally like a monster. Like, this is a pro wrestler, brother. And these guys come out there, man. They get these grand entrances, and they're colorful, and they're doing these big moves. And I mean, it's just such a spectacle.
Mm-hmm.
You can't help it. Same with Hulk Hogan, and then for a time, Ultimate Warrior was in that same vein. I thought he was way more like a comic book character. I don't know if I call him a hero, but I guess it depends on when you're talking about. Right. Now I wouldn't. As a kid, I probably would have. Randy Savage too.
Yeah.
When he was a baby face, he was more like an ultimate villain a lot of times.
Oh my God, Randy Savage, easily one of the top 5 heels ever.
For the very angle you were talking about, the way the Mega Power. But the way that they did it, though, you could almost sympathize with Randy Savage.
Uh-huh.
It was very, very well done.
I know we're getting a little bit off topic, but Randy Savage's feud with Dusty Rhodes in WWF, beautiful.
Two of the greatest. I mean, what can you say, man? You can't expect anything but greatness in those two.
Right. But then you take, going back to Hogan, if you get past WrestleMania 9 and you go into WCW, you had feuds with Flair, Vader, and then you get the NWO starting up, and you want to talk about probably, I mean, even to this day, you see NWO shirts in the crowd.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
One of the most... Now, I won't say the most influential faction, because the most influential faction in history, in my opinion, was the Four Horsemen.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's for another episode.
Which incarnation, though, I guess, is always a debated... Is a heatedly debated topic. That would be a fun...
Arn and Ole, Tully, and Rick. Period. But yeah, I mean, Hogan, you talk about an ever-present character on screens from the 80s all the way into the 2000s.
Yeah.
And like you said, just absolutely larger than life. He legit looked like a superhero. And I had a bunch of Hulk Hogan like action figures.
Did you have the wrestling buddy?
Did I have the wrestling buddy? I don't know if I did.
Oh,
I know I had like the very first one, the giant like rubber ones of the action figures.
Yeah.
That only came out. There was only like 6 of them.
Yeah.
I remember Hogan was one. I think Hillbilly Jim. I want to say JYD was one.
That sounds right.
Yeah, those things were fantastic. They did not move at all.
No. Those things have evolved quite dramatically through the years.
Oh my God, you are so right. But yeah, my second choice on my personal Mount Rushmore of wrestling is the immortal Hulk Hogan.
Brother.
Now my third choice Hold on, let me take a sip here. I'm getting some dry mouth.
Giggity. I don't even know what that means.
My third choice is somebody that was, again, an ever-present character for well over 20 years. And somebody that started out in a tag team, turned heel, and it was the best thing that ever happened to him because he became one of the absolute biggest superstars of all time. That's another one. Yeah, I'll get into that. That's another good kayfabe storyline because it was so believable. But, I mean, the guy, he's gone back and face from heel and babyface a few different times. But every single thing he did in the ring, you believed. Shawn Michaels.
Oh yeah, I was waiting for that. Jim Neidhart.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
Oh, Rip Neidhart. Yeah, Shawn Michaels. Now, I was a huge Rockers fan growing up. So it broke my heart when I saw Shawn super kick him and throw him through the plate glass window of a barbershop.
Oh yeah, dude, that's that one of those like little kid crying moments. Like, oh no! How
Oh
could
yeah,
this be?
the kids in the crowd were bawling. You can go. Now, when I say him, I mean Marty Jannetty, his tag team partner in the Rockers. If you have not seen that, go on YouTube and find it. The Barbershop with the Rockers, or Rockers Breakup, I guess. One of the best angles of that time, because you believed that Michaels and Jannetty wanted to absolutely tear each other apart.
Well, I think what's interesting is that if the Rockers, they were a popular tag team, but I wouldn't say that they were like they were part of the background to me in a sense, like how a lot of other characters stood out. The Rockers were really good, but they weren't like, I don't know, superstars to me.
They weren't the Hart Foundation. They weren't Demolition.
Yeah, they were just kind of like this. They were interesting to watch, you know, because they did stuff at the time that a lot of people weren't doing in the Federation. But when that started happening, all of a sudden you're getting this you're getting a spotlight on this tag team, and you're like, and they're actually, this is Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, and they're really talking about them as like these individual characters now all of a sudden, not the team. And then to see them break up, and then to see Shawn Michaels go on to do what he did, to grow out of that, man, and really just become one of, if not the best in-ring worker as far as like overall getting the audience into it, just everything, you know.
I firmly believe that inside the ropes, Shawn is probably the best ever. I really believe that. Not only for his ring work, but for his mic work. The guy can talk better than anybody. Except maybe my number one guy on the list. Or my fourth guy on the list. Like I said, no particular order.
Well, I agree with you on the charisma part of it. On the actual specific technician part of it in the ring, I don't know. He's one of the best. I think he's in the top upper echelon.
Ugh. But yeah, I mean, he went from feuding with Jannetty after turning heel. Then, you had the Diesel era. Then you had the two dudes with attitudes when they turned babyface.
I forgot about that.
Well, actually, it was Survivor Series '94 when Diesel turned babyface after Shawn super kicked him for the third straight time on quote accident. And then Diesel went on to win the WWF Championship from Bob Backlund at Madison Square Garden like 2 days later.
And like what? 8 seconds?
8 seconds. Wrestling Encyclopedia, ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome. But then, you had DX. One of the most influential factions of all time.
Well, yeah, especially when you see who spawned out of it and what they went on to do.
Right. You look at Triple H now. COO of the company, married to the boss's daughter. I mean...
you can't get much... How many times has he been Universal... I don't know if he's been Universal Champion, but how many times has he been World Champion? How many championships has he had? I mean...
I think he's at 14.
I mean, geez. What more can you do?
And of course, he's going to face The Undertaker again.
I was just thinking about that.
But then, when Shawn was out for those 4 years, he was still on TV. As like the GM or commissioner or whatever you wanted to call him at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't the whole time, but I know it was a good chunk of it. And he was such a great GM. Talking to Vince and calling him Vin Man, and the charisma of that guy.
When he's on screen, you wanted to see what he's going to do. You were constantly glued to him.
Right. Hanging on every single word he said. Every single time.
Which, by the way, was regardless of whether you hated him or loved him.
Oh, absolutely. Because some of his heel promos, even as, like back when he was with Sensational Sherry. Like, you look at SummerSlam 92 in Wembley, when you had Shawn against Rick Martel, and there was supposed to be no hitting in the face.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a crazy stipulation for a match. But they worked it so well, and Sherry just added to it. Sherry, one of my favorites of all time. I love Sensational Sherry.
Well, she was another one. When she was on screen, man, you just couldn't help but be paying attention to her. The cauldron! Fucking no holds bar. God.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you can go on down the line. Another iteration of DX, all the way up to Ric Flair's retirement match, and then the two matches with The Undertaker, WrestleMania 25 and 26.
Which, I mean, dude, I don't know if I've seen the second one, but I was watching the first one, like, live. We were watching the pay-per-view. I mean, man, you talk about two masters at work.
Absolutely.
I genuinely could not have told you who was going to win that match. You know what I mean? It was just like, wow, I could... Oh, when it was finally over, it was almost like you realized you were holding this big breath the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh my God. It's
well,
over.
And that's the same way with, I mean, one of my absolute favorite matches of all time. Because, that's WrestleMania 26. 14 years prior to that, WrestleMania 12, the Iron Man match between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart.
Oh my God, man.
That had to go to overtime after an hour. You want to talk about two masters at work?
Oh, yeah.
The storytelling in that match is absolutely beyond reproach. It is just so incredible to watch. It's like reading a book cover to cover in an hour. because you are so enthralled by every single movement in that ring and everything that's being said on commentary. Again, Vince McMahon on commentary. The boyhood dream has come true for Shawn Michaels. Pure emotion when I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it.
Well,
I mean,
the way that they sold an hour-long match. I mean, hour-long matches weren't like. I mean, Ric Flair used to go hour every night with Ricky Steamboat. I mean, an hour-long Broadway, you know, but they made it sound like it was the most titanic, epic, you know, endurance trial someone could face. They did such a good job of selling that.
It was just unbelievable. So, yeah. My third choice, now, for my Mount Rushmore of wrestling, personally, is HBK, Shawn Michaels. Now, to recap, my first choice was Vince McMahon, and my second choice was Hulk Hogan.
Yes.
Now, my fourth choice, probably the most popular choice. I'm sure this guy will be on yours. Simply because of being a master of what he does, even when he was unwanted. And then taking his character to New York, being given an absolutely terrible character, and making something out of it that will forever be remembered as probably the most controversial character you'll ever see on television. And to boot, had some of the greatest storylines and matches that I've ever seen. I mean, give me a hell yeah.
Oh.
Stone Cold Steve Austin.
You know, there for a second, I thought they could have gone a couple different ways. Oh yeah, Steve Austin. I figured that one would pop up. I mean, how could it? Although, I can't wait to do mine now, because yeah.
So yeah, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, when I talk about him being unwanted,
yeah,
even being a master of his craft, obviously I'm talking about WCW. Because I mean, one of the coolest tag teams to watch in WCW in the early '90s was the Hollywood Blondes.
Oh yeah.
And then you had the breakup storyline between them. And you know, just a quick shout, Colonel Parker.
Yeah.
Who didn't love Colonel Parker? That guy's still going. He's on MLW now.
Oh, I know they talk about him on other podcasts all the time, man. They have other affectionate nicknames for him though, but yeah.
He's managing another stud stable right now.
God, what is he in his 60s, 70s now?
He's gotta be. But anyway, yeah, and you know, Austin gets the fax. It was a fax, wasn't it? Fired by fax or FedEx.
Yes.
It was a FedEx from Eric Bischoff with a letter of termination because, you know, quote, all you are is a guy with black boots and black trunks and we can't do anything with you.
Well, that's one of those, that depends on whose perspective you're listening to.
Well, yeah, that's true. Again, we're just fans. We're not insiders.
But, I mean, regardless of whether you can nitpick at the different angle of it, you can even go back to the Brian Pillman thing, going behind the scenes. You know, Austin was starting to get a big singles push, then all of a sudden they just put him together with Pillman and kind of derailed that.
Well, yeah, because wasn't he supposed to be the U.S. champion?
Yeah. And they just, for some reason, they put him, it was almost like they were trying to make him fail, but instead, him and Pillman, who were, Pillman's amazing too, made it into this amazing tag team. So then they broke him up. So how can he not? I mean, I don't know.
Because why? Hashtag WCW ruins everything.
Yep. Kind of hard to argue with that, especially now.
Yeah. Especially after you just went back and watched Starrcade 95 last night.
Yeah, it was interesting. You could definitely see that Luger and Sting were. I think it was more Luger than Sting. Was still kind of finding his. I don't know. Maybe Luger was just never good, and I'm just romanticizing it.
I'm not gonna really dispute that. But yeah, after being fired, Austin goes to WCW or ECW, sorry, and cuts some absolutely incredible promos on WCW. Those are some of the best promos I've ever seen. Because talking about Hogan and talking about Bischoff, and just straight shoot from my perspective, I could be wrong, but oh my god, watching those promos even now gives me chills.
Yeah. Is that when he was doing the Monday Night Quill? This is the big boys play with themselves.
Yeah. So then, after that, I mean, obviously, he's picked up by the WWF and put with Ted DiBiase as his manager and given the nickname of the Ringmaster.
Oh my god.
And he's the new $1 Million champion. And using the $1 Million Dream as his finisher.
Which is funny to think about, even now.
Yeah. Luckily, that didn't last too long. And Stone Cold Steve Austin came out of it. And then at King of the Ring 96, Austin 316 was born. And it just became an absolute rocket ship from there on. There is nothing that I wanted more every week than to wait for Monday to see what Austin was going to do next. Especially once the storyline with him and Vince started.
Yeah.
Some of the absolute best writing, best booking I have ever seen in my life. Because you were absolutely enthralled with every single bit of it.
It was a perfect storm of circumstances, too. Because you got the Mike Tyson thing that they were able to work into it and make it all...
You ruined it, damn it!
You ruined everything!
Well, and then that's how the Big Show premiered, was during the Austin McMahon storyline. St. Valentine's Day Massacre, 1999. Black Bar Cage match between Austin and Vince.
Tore up to the bottom of the ring.
Yep.
It's pretty sweet. Pretty sweet visual.
Threw Austin out of the cage, or threw him against the cage. Cage breaks loose. Austin falls on the ground and wins the match. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that excellent. So good, man. I will say that was. Why could they book like that now? Damn it.
Well, and you look at what happened at SummerSlam '96. Coming back, that's when Owen almost broke Austin's neck. The ugliest finish to a match I've ever seen in my life.
The only thing I can think of that's even comparable is with Sting and Seth Rollins. How Sting just kind of collapsed.
Yeah.
They had to finish it real quick.
But, I mean, Austin came back from that. Now, granted, his career as an in-ring performer, I wish could have lasted longer in the WWF. But all of his roles after that have just been so much fun to watch. When he was the general manager, even when he was still an in-ring performer, during the Invasion era, during that angle, when he was actually teamed with Vince, and he had the guitar all the time,
Yeah.
some of the funniest stuff I've ever seen.
Kumbaya, my lord.
Yes.
Kumbaya.
And you wouldn't think, okay, we're gonna come on this week and you're gonna sing Kumbaya to Vince. Are you kidding me? And it was one of the funniest things you'll ever see. Because of the people involved. The talent, the producers, everybody. Everybody knew how to get it over. And it's just great. But yeah, Austin was the one guy that no matter what, I wanted to make sure I saw what he did each and every week. And that's why I chose him as my fourth choice for my personal Mount Rushmore of wrestling.
Steve Austin, I mean, not only was he so good at on all aspects of what he did, but he was another one like Hulk Hogan who either created or had a hand in creating a paradigm shift in the business. And maybe you could argue that he came along. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I just said absolutely. That's
so you could argue maybe he just came along. Like maybe it's once again a perfect combination of things. But Austin he knew how to take every opportunity and make the best out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, he got it. I mean, he was a pro wrestler. He was. I mean, dude, he and no matter where he went, he couldn't be held down. He shone through.
Mm-hmm. Well, sir, you're up, and now you've got me very, very intrigued.
Yeah, you're gonna find this a very odd list compared. Let me start off by saying, my preamble is, I remind you that I watched wrestling up until like 98, 99, maybe, and then took a break for a while, and then come back here and there. So a lot of what I made my list off of really comes from the roots, like the first, and what's this, the 10 years or so that I watched it.
Okay, then I guarantee I know at least one of them that's on there.
I think you could probably guess one of them for sure. I know one, you're going to be completely surprised. I'm going to start off, my first one, I'll just get this one out of the way because, and understandably so, I think you'll be shocked. It's Hulk Hogan.
Wow.
Let me explain this.
I am shocked.
As I said, when I was a kid, and this is all going to actually end up tying back together in a weird way, I hated Hulk Hogan because the same reason I hated Superman as a superhero. He lost. It seemed like, because Hogan would do some heelish things sometimes, even though he was a baby face. If he didn't win, or he cheated Sid Justice out of winning the Royal Rumble. I love Sid Justice. Once again, I watched WCW. And he went to he went to WCW and he did the Hulk Hogan thing there, and then he became a heel, and that's when I really started noticing. The thing is whether I liked Hulk Hogan or not as a kid, I cared, and he was such a big part of that landscape that. And I will say this one is more of a from like looking at it from my perspective now. After he did the stuff in the NWO, and then he went back to WWE, I'll tell you the match that really made me realize, oh my God, Hulk Hogan's probably the best of all time, as far as superstars go, is when him and The Rock had their match.
Oh my God!
At
Yes.
WrestleMania 18.
What a great match!
Because I don't know, it just clicked because I understood things more. I don't know. When I look back at Hogan now, for a lot of the same reasons you just said about Austin, he knew how to take he understood how to take every moment and make the most out of it. He understood how to get the crowd to play right into his hands and do exactly what he wanted to do. You know, he was that heel that came out there, even though you saw him get beat on the match last night, or he would cheat to win or something. He'd come out and talk about how he beat everybody up by himself. And you know what I mean? I wanted to come through the TV at him as a heel when he was in the NWO in a good way. And I think that's why when I was thinking of people, I'm like, you know, I'm going to throw Hogan on there because I understand now what he was, and whether I liked him or not, his storylines left such an impression on me because I was emotionally invested, and he is so good at what he did. He was such a big part of my landscape as a kid, especially, that it's hard to. I was like, I'm gonna put him on. Like I said, that one is more of a collective thing. You know what I mean? But I wanted to say that one first because when you said that earlier, I'm like, oh, he's gonna be surprised.
Yeah.
But I also put down, like, you know, the build to the feud with Sting up to 97 Starrcade, even though they fought.
Oh God, what an absolute work of art!
Oh, dude, the stuff with Roddy Piper, both in WWE and in WCW, fucking amazing. Which, you know, Roddy Piper had a lot to do with that too, no doubt.
I love when he came out to the ring, Piper's like, "Hi." Hogan just, "Hi." Hogan
had this, yeah. Well, he had the same look on his face that everybody, like, I think all of us had, like, what?
What in the blue hell is Piper doing there?
Because he had just been in the WWE not too long, a couple months before that, doing something, like on some pay-per-view or something. So it was really surprising.
That might have been when he was working a program with Jerry Lawler.
That might have been it. I know there wasn't much of a gap between the two times. It was, yeah. Their interactions were great. And that heat that Hogan got, I would get so worked up at him because how he would treat Roddy Piper and, like, you know, about his scar and I don't know, all that stuff. He just got under my skin. You know what I mean? So Hulk Hogan's my first one.
Rip Roddy Piper.
Rip Roddy Piper, another one. Maybe he should be they should add another head for Roddy Piper because he was truly one of the greats. I mean, maybe not for me personally in a way. But overall, I mean, dude, you can't.
Probably the best talker ever.
Yeah. I mean, dude, he can make you want to come through the TV at him. He can make you want to get a plane ticket and fly to New York just so you can just beat his ass. Or try. Not really, but...
Yeah.
Okay. My second one, talk about someone, once again, with longevity. Someone that came from WCW, and they were told, we don't see anything for you. And he came to WWE and was given this gimmick that if almost anybody else was given this gimmick, probably anybody else, it would have crashed and burned.
I think I know where you're going.
Or would at least, maybe got a little bit out of it, but then would have moved on. But this guy took it, and as a kid made me believe that he was impervious to pain. I believe
you not go where I thought you were going. Now
no.
I know where you're going.
Well, this guy, no matter what you did to him, he always popped back up. And when he came down to the ring, the look on his face there was no smiling, there was no playing to the crowd. He creeped you out. And he went on to have probably the longest active wrestler in WWE is The Undertaker.
Oh, I still didn't know where you were going. But that's the one that I knew you were going to put on your list.
Yeah. Undertaker, because he was. I mean, he took time off for injuries and stuff. I mean, he had breaks, but as far as like he never left the company, he was there. He was always part of the fabric of what was going on in the company. And when the times changed, he was able to evolve in such a way to where he was still recognizable, but he wasn't. He fit with the mold of what was happening. And then when the time was right, he went back to what to what it got him there. But even then, it was a more updated version of it. And I marveled over the years, not only watching him in the ring, and you see matches. Some of the matches I wrote down here, we talked about the match with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25. I mean, Jesus Christ, dude. I mean, if you're gonna watch a wrestling match, that's the one I point to people. Like, these are two people that just, they know each other so well, and they've been around so long, and they're just so good at what they do. His feud with Kane, I love the way that was booked. When he appeared at Bad Blood and that whole storyline.
Mm-hmm.
That match he had with Ric Flair, WrestleMania 18. I mean, you tell me Ric Flair and Undertaker, because it was like it was an Extreme Rules match, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
You tell me Undertaker and Ric Flair are going to have an Extreme Rules match, I go, oh god, this is going to be
Awful.
interesting. Yeah. And because not only was it an amazing match, I didn't know who was going to win. I really thought Flair might pull it off. I really did. Not to mention, we got one of the best spine busters I've ever seen in my life from Arn Anderson, who ran in out of nowhere and nailed the Undertaker with a spine. Oh my god, I about jumped out of my seat, because at that point,
I'm sorry, the absolute best spine buster in the business ever. Period.
Mr. Arn Anderson, man. If he wouldn't have got cut short, I mean, he had a good career, but I think he was like 39 or 40 when he had to stop wrestling, wasn't he? Because of his back.
I know he was pretty young.
Yeah, he was talking about one of the greatest, man. If Ric Flair wouldn't have been in such vicinity of him, who knows what Arn Anderson might have went on to, that's a different discussion. But but that match. But see, then you take matches like, and I was going back to, because I know this happened a few times. I was looking up examples. Like, it was Raw, February 24th, 2014. Rey Mysterio and The Undertaker. And once again, and this speaks to both of them, that they went out and had a good match, when you would think that this shouldn't even be like a competition. It should be Undertaker grabbing the guy, throwing him, and pinning him. But instead, they both made it seem, anytime they fought each other, it made it seem like an actual competitive match. And once again, I think that speaks to both of them. But no doubt, Mark Calloway, which the other thing I was going to say is, I have never in my life, of all the interviews I listened to, the podcast, the crazy people, the respectful people, blah, 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 I have never heard anybody say anything bad about Mark Calloway. About his presence in the locker room, about his presence, how he, he's always respected, about him as a human being, how he handles people. I mean, he's been with the company for as long as he had, came in at 90, so, 28 years?
I can say close to 30 years now.
Yeah, he's I couldn't ignore him. I mean, because, and like I said, a lot of that had to do with the fact that, he was right there at the beginning when I came in and started watching it.
I thought about putting him on, but then I was going through, who meant the most to me.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I'm one of the biggest marks in the world for The Undertaker.
Oh, I know. Well,
but
by the time yeah. Well, I think by the time I get to the end of my list, I think, yeah, I understand that sentiment, trust me. Because it was hard to really, to put that filter on it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's one person that's missing for both of our lists that, if you were going by the truly greatest of all time, should be on the top, 3, but I don't think he impacted either one of us, personally as much. But I won't say it yet. So my first, my number 3, or I guess it don't matter what order, but I'll just this is one that might catch you off guard, but you have to remember, if we're going by ones that influenced us as kids. I watched a pretty fair amount of WCW as a kid. And while I didn't like Hulk Hogan in the context of what he was, my next guy, Sting,
Who?
is someone that throughout the years, and this is another one I was sitting and thinking about. I'm like, man, no matter where Sting has been, I've enjoyed watching him. I pop for him when he comes on screen, whether he's doing the painted up Sting thing or whether he was doing the Crow Sting thing, which I think was one of the best, like we said, with him and Hogan, one of the best storylines. I didn't see as much TNA stuff, but I know I saw some of it. I know he was still pretty active. And I think he could have had a good run in WWE if he wouldn't have hurt himself.
Oh, yeah, so do I.
But, like, dude, his matches, what was it? I don't know if you ever seen the Clash of Champions, 1988, the first one.
I think I've gone back and watched it, but might have been only like once.
Him and Flair, man. And you know, Flair obviously is the grizzled veteran at that point. But Sting, I mean, those two just match each other beat for beat. And they played through that entire promotion all the way up until the end. They were one of the first matches on Nitro. They were the last match on Nitro. You know what I mean? Like, and to me, Sting is just like, when I think back to that time frame, Sting always pops up because I love Sting. He was almost like a Hulk Hogan for me in a way, because I didn't like Hulk Hogan. Because Sting didn't always win. Sting wasn't like Hulk Hogan in that sense. I mean, he won a lot of times, but I mean, to see, like, there's a match, like, I remember Great American Bash 92 with him and Vader, which I can't remember who won. I think Vader might have won. Yeah, he was one I went back and forth with. I'm like, Sting, to me, man, like, I don't like to bring it up, but my deep-seated loathing and anger for how they did him in WWE and how they mishandled him. Yeah, he got hurt. I understand that they couldn't help that. But even before that, the way they did him and the bullshit they put him through, if he could have had some kind of run in WWE, even if it was like a year or two, and maybe he won the championship for like a month or something, it could have capped off his career. That, to me, he was the face of WCW in a way, not NWA, but he became like that icon of WCW. You know, you always had Ric Flair, who was like that root to the promotion. But Sting, you know, and that's what made that storyline so good with him and Hogan. You know, going against each other, because, you know, these two people, once again, as a kid, you're always like, man, I'd love to see Sting fight Hulk Hogan. You know, I did anyway.
Oh no, I totally agree. Sting is a great shout for this list. It really, really is.
And when he used to do, I tell you, and this I can tell you now because we done the list already. When I was doing the finisher list, one of the first ones I had on there, and it stayed on the list up until like I started really refining it, was the Scorpion Death Drop. Just because I loved when he would drop out of the ceiling or come up behind somebody, how he would grab them and pull them back and look at them, and they looked freaked out, and he would hit them with it, and they would just be laid the hell out. I just love that, man. Him coming down from the rafters, him, just that whole thing. Once again, just like The Undertaker, you know, he reinvented himself when he needed. I'll never say he was as good as a overall ring wrestler as Undertaker. I don't think, but for what he was and what he meant to every organization that he was in. Because I freaked out when he showed up at Survivor Series, and the way I thought they did a pretty good job. The way he laid out Triple H, and then after that atrocious match at WrestleMania, I was just so angry how they handled him, because I was so psyched to see him back. And he's another one, you don't ever hear really anything bad about him, you know, behind the scenes from anybody. Maybe that he wasn't as big of a wrestling fan at heart, but he must have been good enough because he sold me on it, man. You know. So, recap so far: Hulk Hogan, Undertaker, and the kind of out of nowhere Sting. Now, for my last one, this was the very first one that popped in my head, and this never even wavered for a minute, because when I think of wrestling, as far as strictly the in-the-ring component of it, not the charisma, because unfortunately this wasn't. Not that he didn't have it, but there's a lot people a lot better than him at it. But I would argue, as far as not only being able to not hurt people but make it look believable, but the storytelling aspect, I think he did it better than anybody else. I think Shawn was right there with him. I think Steve Austin was a little better than Shawn. I still think, which Austin's kind of hard because his career got cut way shorter than a lot of those other two. I think, you know, at least as far as being able to really move in the ring, and because when him and this person, I'll go ahead and say it, Bret Hart.
Oh,
I mean, I no shit. I'm not lying to you. I didn't even mean to do this. Bret Hart on my TV screen just beat Mr. Perfect for the Intercontinental belt at SummerSlam.
Oh my God, what a great match!
I just looked over and see him in the sharpshooter, and I was like, oh, how ironic, because that was the match that I would say that the match that really got me. I mean, dude, it was always that argument, you know. It was always you were either a Shawn Michaels fan or a Bret Hart fan. And once again, with Shawn Michaels, I look back now, and my dude Shawn was just so in another universe against just about anybody else and what he did. It's hard to, you know, he's so good. But to me, as far as, once again, it's strictly in the ring, telling the story, Bret Hart just had a knack for it that just okay. I'll tell you another match. When I started getting into Bret Hart, WWE, a little while later, WWF had put out a videotape of, you know how they used to put out the collection of matches, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is Raw in 1994. It was 1-2-3 Kid versus Bret Hart. Now that's one of those matches where you go, well, this is gonna be a squash match. But I think you got to point out at the time the 1-2-3 Kid was going through that. He beat Razor Ramon. DiBiase, right? Was another one he beat. There's a few people that he was this quote unquote he was actually a really well known indie wrestler even then. This quote unquote little jobber kid came in and started beating all these big wrestlers. So, you know, him and Bret Hart had this match. I went back and watched it. I mean, dude, I don't know how you cannot watch that match and go, Bret Hart is just like. And 1-2-3 Kid too. It was great. I mean, I've never seen announcers give a match a standing ovation. And it was Jim Ross and Randy Savage. And I mean, people were standing and clapping at the end of this match, and it's just like, what did I just watch?
Said this from an episode of Raw in '94.
Yes, I was trying to find the date, and if you look it up, dude, you'll find it. It's a really popular match. And once again, Waltman, it shows how good he was, and he just got better. Because dude, as far as the competitive match, you had moments where you're like, oh my God, this kid almost just pinned Bret Hart. Because Bret even looks like exasperated. He starts getting really. You gotta watch the match, but an even more profound example of it, I think, and probably the best example of it, is when him and Steve Austin had their submission match.
Good God, what a match.
Which, once again, Austin is the other component of that, which I think he's right there with Bret and Shawn as being able to tell that story in the ring. I mean, that double turn.
And don't forget the third component of that match.
The referee?
Ken Shamrock.
Yeah, that's true. He did a really good job, and he added this air of credibility to the whole vibe of it being a, you know, knockdown, drag out fight. And that, I mean, dude, is there any more iconic wrestling image in wrestling, or just in general, Steve Austin and the sharpshooter bleeding.
Nope. That image has been used so many times. I love it.
Which is a funny story about that match. They weren't supposed to bleed, and Brett did it. He told Steve, he's like, "Just we need to do this." And if you watch it along with Something to Wrestle With, or I think it's Something to Wrestle With, does a watch along of it, or they tell you can see the moment kind of where Brett does it, but it's really, really like you have to really be looking for it. You know what I mean? They're really quick. I don't know. I thought that was kind of funny, but I mean, I'm glad they did it because it really sold that. And they walked out there booing Brett and cheering Austin.
Yeah, the best double turn I've ever seen. Anybody has ever seen, guaranteed.
And once again, that is both of those guys. That Brett was, he couldn't have done it without Brett. I mean, that's for sure. Another match. This popped in my head. It was at WrestleMania 10. Do you remember that WrestleMania? I think it was WrestleMania 10. Brett had 2 matches.
Yeah, it was Brett and Owen.
Dude, that match. Not only was that a great match, but Owen won. Which we talk about, like the kayfabe thing. That was just kind of cool because how often did you see Bret Hart get pinned or get beat at that? Because he was starting to become a top guy, as far as like.
And Owen pinned him clean too.
Completely clean, right off a victory roll. I was waiting for Bret to kick out, and he never did. I was like, oh my god. When Owen, I mean, man, different time, different place. He was just as good at Bret as Bret in the ring.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I think from what I've heard from a lot of people, I think the opinion is even from Bret himself that he's probably better in a lot of ways. But unfortunately, you know how that goes.
That's an episode of Raw those episodes of Raw and SmackDown from that week. I can't watch them.
No.
I cannot watch them because it just makes me cry. Same with Eddie.
Yeah.
And Eddie, I don't want to like undermine the death of Owen Hart by any stretch of the imagination because it was absolutely tragic. But when Eddie died, I was such a huge fan of Eddie at the time, and he was going so strong. He was in a storyline with Batista, and he was at one of the absolute pinnacle of his career, and he was gone. And God, it hurts so bad.
It's a shame that he did. I mean, and obviously, because of where he came from and how he came in, I don't think he was going to make either one of our lists just because of the timing aspect of it. But no doubt an honorable mention for all time.
Oh, without question. Without question. So that's quite the list you've got there, sir.
Well, dude, Bret Hart, like I said, it's a shame to see what happened to him and what became of him now, because I wish he was someone who could be there helping the kids and training them, and that art of telling a story in their match, which is a lost art now. And that's a whole other argument of whether that's just part of the evolution of the business or whether it's laziness. I don't know. I guess it depends on how you look at it. But
well, I know Sean is working at the Performance Center.
Thank God.
Yeah. Because, one of the absolute greatest storytellers ever.
That's why I said, like, you brought up the Iron Man match, and it's like, it's another one of those matches. I mean, they both made that match great.
Yeah.
I just feel like it overall, as far as, like, the whole package in the ring, I just felt Bret was a little bit, he was just my top favorite out of all of them. And it's a very narrow margin in that aspect, but I love the Hitman, man. I loved Bret Hart when I was a kid. Hated Shawn Michaels because of Bret Hart. I was so pissed off when they did the overtime. I was pissed off when the Montreal screw job happened. Obviously, it's a completely different aspect now, or viewpoint now. But, yeah. Emotional impact.
Yeah, and those were only like a year and a half apart.
Yeah. And then the decline.
Yeah.
The WCW years, which I didn't hardly see any of, and going back and looking at it now, I'm kind of glad I didn't.
Yeah. So, I find it interesting that we only had one similarity.
And it was the one that I think you didn't think I was going to put on there.
No, not at all. I thought when you were talking about the Undertaker, when you said coming from WCW with a character that wouldn't have worked for anyone else, at first I thought you were talking about Jericho. Then I thought you were talking about Vader.
But I got honorable mention written down here, Vader, because it was the same thing with the finisher when we did the finishers. Vader, as a kid, left an impression on me, man, because I believed Big Van Vader could beat anybody up. Like,
absolutely.
And when he hit that power bomb, if he would have had a better run in WWE, which I think a lot of that's their fault, but there's also a lot of fault that goes on him for some other things. Once again, depending on where you're looking, I guess. But that kind of quashed him a little bit for me, which is why I didn't put him on the list. Had he had maybe a stronger overall, arc in his career, I could have believed that he could have killed anybody, man. I mean, he's Big Van Vader.
Exactly. Now, an honorable mention for me is a guy that I say all the time is my favorite superstar of all time. But as far as impactfulness, I had to go with the other four. Is Foley.
Oh, yeah.
From the early WCW days to the ECW days to the WWF days to the TNA days, Foley reinvented himself so many times because he made sure you always were paying attention to him.
Mm-hmm. I just seen a clip the other day from it was a man. I can't remember what pay-per-view it was. He was supposed to be taking on Triple H. And it was Dude Love. He was up on screen. He's like, "Oh, this ain't really my kind of match, baby." And he brings out Mankind. And they're
no, that's when he. Oh yeah,
and
yeah. That was actually a Raw. That was a Raw.
Was it a Raw? Okay.
Yeah, because that was when he. The finish was the pile driver through the table at the top of the ramp.
Oh. Oh, he's not dead. Oh.
Yeah, because when as Mankind, he said Cactus Jack is back, and then the camera cut to Triple H going absolutely berserk.
Oh yeah, he looked scared out of his mind.
Bang bang.
Are you thinking what I think you think I'm thinking? I think I am thinking what you think I think I'm thinking. You're right, man. I mean, whether he's on our personal Mount Rushmore or not, he's definitely an all-time great.
Yeah. And if you're gonna go back and watch, and I'm not even gonna say the Hell in a Cell match. I'm gonna say Royal Rumble 2000, Triple H, Cactus Jack, hardcore match for the WWF title. Oh my God.
Bang bang. Well, if you're gonna watch a Mankind, you want to see an interesting Mankind Hell in the Cell, watch the Shawn Michaels Mankind Hell in the Cell. I think it's an overlooked one.
I'll give you that. Ugh. Well, this has been rather interesting and rather eye-opening. Really, to see who you put on there was, I was quite surprised by that.
I figured you might be. I don't know. If you're surprised by Bret Hart, that kind of surprises me. But the rest of them, yeah.
I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily surprised by Bret Hart because of what he's done in the past. Just the way he is today.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I mean, that's not what you wanted to look at. You wanted to look at from who impacted you growing up. which I totally get.
Which is why Hogan was kind of a weird caveat, because he impacted me over my entire... Even now, it's unfortunate things have played out the way they had, because it'd be cool to see him around. Maybe he'll be back someday. I don't know, but...
Well, they put him back in the Hall of Fame, so...
Just him not being part of the landscape is just...
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It really is.
You're just missing it. Yeah.
Because of the enormity of the impact that he's had on the business over the past 30 years. Hell, 40 years. So, quick review. My personal Mount Rushmore of wrestling: Vince McMahon, Hulk Hogan, Shawn Michaels, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
And my personal Mount Rushmore of wrestling: Hulk Hogan, Undertaker, Sting, and Bret Hart.
Two very different lists, other than Hogan. But it's up for debate. So anybody listening to this, I would love to know your personal Mount Rushmore of wrestling and why. You know, drop some comments. This will be on YouTube. Drop some comments down below and tell us your personal Mount Rushmore of wrestling. Remember, you can only pick 4. But until then, this has been episode 4 of TGW Turnbuckle Talk. Loving doing this, man. This is a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, man. It's cool to explore these topics. It's got me really thinking about stuff like in more depth than I have in a while.
So, plug our socials. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/TG Wrestling. You can find us on Twitter at ThoseGuys734. You can find me on Twitter at EvilPenguin1981. You can follow my partner in crime on Twitter at
OddSmith311.
And you can follow us on Twitch at Bananarama TV, and you can find us on YouTube by searching #ControlFreaks.
We're usually the one of, if not the first option that comes up. Check out our channel and give us if I can say it right. Give us a
Subscribe.
Subscribe to us. Yeah, I'll just say that. Stop over and subscribe. We'll have all these podcasts up there, as well as shows from TGW past and present and other Bananarama related content. So no excuse not to watch.
That is right. So, for OddSmith311, I am Evil Penguin Gaming signing off. And as always, we have been 1, a 2, a 3. Those guys.
Bret Hart rules.